Hello everybody, and welcome to what will be quite a different video this time around. I've been playing Yakuza 3 quite a bit recently. It's the one Yakuza title that I hadn't completed as yet, and now that it is on PlayStation 4, I've been making up for that and having a great time, as I always do with this series. I really do love my Yakuza titles. One of the things that I always love about them is the minigames, and I get really wrapped up in those and often forget that there's a game aside from the minigames. This time around, I found myself really hooked on the Hanafuda gambling game that's in there. And I realized that I hadn't done a video on Hanafuda at any point, and it is actually something that I'm quite passionate about. So I figured I'd make up for that and show you some footage of one of the minigames within Yakuza 3 while I talk about, I guess, Hanafuda itself. So enjoy the video. If you haven't played Yakuza 3 yet, do so. It's really great, and it is on PlayStation 4 now. And when you do drop into the gambling hall and learn yourself how to play some Koi-Koi. So Koi-Koi is the most popular game that uses the Hanafuda deck of cards. Just like with European playing cards, there are a lot of different card games that you can play with Hanafuda, but basically Koi-Koi is the one that people learn and is the kind of the default game that is associated with these cards. And it works a little bit like poker. You've got 48 cards. Unlike a European deck of cards, they don't have numbers, they've just got pictures. Your goal is to create sets of those pictures. As you can see, they get played from a deck, and you kind of collect them by matching them up with cards in your own hand. And by creating those sets, at some point you'll get a complete set, and you can end the hand there to get points. And if you do that, then, hand over, you move on to the next one. Or you can choose to Koi-Koi, and if you choose to Koi-Koi, then you continue to play. If you get another set, then you get extra points, which is obviously a good thing. But if your opponent then creates a set before you create that second set, they get a bonus, and that's a big boost of points to them. So there's a bit of a risk reward there, especially when, just like with poker, you don't know what cards are coming, and there's a really kind of heavy element of luck there. You play the odds as best you can, of course, and that's the strategy of the game, but there is that element of luck, and for that reason, it's actually a kind of a gambling game that has been really popular within the seedy kind of underbelly of Japanese society for quite some time, and that's why it's kind of really appropriate to be in the Yakuza games, because it is actually a Yakuza game. I remember the very first time I went to Japan, which was over 10 years ago now. One of the things that I really wanted to come home with as a souvenir was a deck of Hanafuda cards. And I wanted that because everybody knows the story about how Nintendo, before it moved to video games, was a company that made most of its money from manufacturing Hanafuda cards. And my wife had no idea where I could go and get them. So my wife being Japanese, she obviously lived in Japan her whole life, but she had no idea where to get Hanafuda cards. And the reason for that is they really do have that reputation for being a kind of gangster's game in Japan. And while that's changing a little bit now, in modern times, a bit like poker's kind of becoming legitimate, but a couple of decades ago, the Hanafuda game, Koi-Koi and Hanafuda cards are still getting over that reputation and association with the Yakuza. So my wife didn't know where to get a deck of cards because she'd never learned how to play with the Hanafuda cards, because it wasn't something that decent people did in Japan back when my wife was growing up. Nonetheless, I did find a deck of cards and I learned how to play Hanafuda, which is... It's an interesting process because I'd grown up playing card games, so I was really familiar with basically how card games worked. And I obviously had the rule books and all of that to draw and to learn Hanafuda. But there is a level of challenge there because we don't have numbers in Hanafuda cards. You really need to learn how to memorize patterns and such from the pictures, which is a different way of thinking. There are about 13 different sets that you can make in Koi-Koi alone, so to try and learn and memorize all of those and then know which set to try and kind of chase while you're playing, that is a process. I hadn't played a game of Hanafuda or Koi-Koi for about a year before starting Yakuza 3. So the first time I went back into the gambling hall to play Koi-Koi, I found myself a little bit lost. It took me a while to relearn and remember how to play and how to make the right suits and matches to maximize my score. But yeah, once I get back into the swing of it, I remember that I really do love this game. I've got iPhone apps, and there was a DS game that had Koi-Koi in there as part of its collection of kind of card games. So I've spent a lot of time playing this game over the years, both by myself and with whoever will actually play it with me. It is a hard game to teach because, again, without those numbers, European card games are so much easier to teach because the numbers are really easy to create associations with and kind of learn the game that way. When you're looking at pictures, it is more of a process. So beginners tend to feel like they're a little bit out of the loop, and you've got to have somebody who's willing to take the time to learn it to really start to enjoy it, which, it's harder than finding somebody who can just pick up a card game or can learn a card game quickly and get stuck right into it. Now that Hanafuda is starting to become more legitimate and accepted within mainstream society in Japan, we are starting to see it become more of a collectible, and I'm having a great time every time I go to Japan at the moment looking in the toy section of shops to see what kind of collectibles around Hanafuda are there, because it is something that lends itself quite nicely to merchandise. So there's been quite a few companies that have done that. The default Hanafuda deck, which is the one that you're seeing here on front of you, those pictures are standard for the game. So basically every version of Hanafuda, doesn't matter if you buy it from Nintendo or otherwise, will use those pictures. But clever merchandising design allows you to implement characters and things in such a way that the basic premise of those pictures isn't edited, but you can still fit, a little bit of personality in there. So I've got a Pokemon Hanafuda set where all the various Pokemon are kind of implemented within the designs, so you still get the base design, but there's a Jigglypuff or a Pikachu, somewhere in the picture, and it's really cute and really adorable. I've got a Dragon Quest one as well, which does the same thing. I've also got a Moomin one, for people who know Moomin. He's a very popular character in Japan, and I've got quite a lot of Moomin stuff from Japan, including my Hanafuda deck. And yeah, it's a very collectible thing because Hanafuda cards are much more sturdy. They're made of a really kind of thick stock. They're quite long lasting as well, and you can play with them without feeling like you're going to damage your toy. This kind of, in terms of feel, they're quite small as well. They sit halfway, I'd say, between a mahjong tile, which is that heavy kind of ivory feel token, through to the playing cards, which are the European playing cards, which are kind of soft cardboard. Hanafuda cards kind of sit in the middle, so they're robust, they feel good to hold, and they feel like they're quite durable, which again makes them an ideal base for kind of collectible products. If you've never played Hanafuda before, a good place to go is a game like Yakuza 3 to learn, but there are also really cheap apps that are available, if not for free, on Android and iOS and whatever, and I do recommend you go and check them out. If you have the opportunity to buy a deck of Hanafuda cards, please do. You should be able to get them from Amazon and whatever. Most collectible shops in Japan will have at least the Nintendo base design. You'll recognize it from the Napoleon picture on the cover. That's been an iconic Hanafuda card deck for eons now. And in terms of learning the game, like I said, it is a process because it's picture based and you need to learn to memorize picture patterns and combinations, but there are some really useful resources for learning the game online with some really easy to follow descriptions and some good pictures which show you the full list of possible sets that you can make, so you can just print yourself off a copy of that and just play a couple of games while referring to it until you're kind of familiar with it. And in that way it's not that different from learning what the difference is between a royal flush and a full house in poker. I mean, that's pretty abstract when you first look at it, but it doesn't take you too long to get familiar with it. Hanafuda's a bit the same, Koi-Koi's a bit the same, so please do give it a go. This is a bit of Japanese culture that is great and I love it, and I would love to see more people playing it. Thanks very much for tuning in to this little bit of an indulgence video. As always, if you enjoy my stuff, please do like and subscribe to me, and please do back me on Patreon if you enjoy my videos as well. That really helps me to do more of them. Otherwise, we'll see you at the next video.